Today, we gather to remember an important time in American history, Juneteenth, June 19, 1865. On this day in Galveston, Texas, the last enslaved people of the Confederacy finally heard the news. They finally heard the news of their freedom. This was more than 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. This day is not just for celebrating, it's a call to think deeply. It's a call to challenge our understanding and a renewed promise to keep working for liberty. My message today is built on 3 key truths, and they all are based off of General Order number 3. The first key truth that I want us to remember is knowing better does not mean people do better. I say again, if you know better, that does not mean you will do better. In order for us to do better, we got to learn how to will do. In order to will do, you got to learn how to first want to, then can do, then you will do. So General Order number 3 says, the people are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the executive of the United States that all slaves are free. For many of the enslaved people, this message was completely new. A light of hope after many years of being held and captive. But for Texans who were not enslaved, this was not new news. They already knew about the Emancipation Proclamation. The word informed in the order shows a big change. This big change was now that the Union military now had enough soldiers to make sure that this order was followed in Texas by finally bringing freedom west of the Mississippi River. Texans knew what being free meant. Still, for over 2 years, they chose not to act on those words. Their inaction wasn't because they didn't know. It was because they didn't want to act. And there wasn't a strong enough force to make them act. We see this pattern today. Many people want to defend freedom and fairness, but without the right tools and power, whether it be military strength, a strong economy, or people working together, the desire to fight injustice can remain just that, a desire. I served in the Army for over 27 years, and I served in support of Afghanistan and the Iraqi War. One thing that I lament about is, sadly, the truth still remains that if we don't have the ability to resist, we won't. We saw this when the Afghan people wanted to resist, but they didn't have the can-do or the ability or the tools that the United States provided in the war. The actual will-do, they did not have it because they couldn't resist, because they did not have the firepower. This teaches us why it's so important to not just want something, but to build the capability to make it happen. If we don't have the can-do, we truly never will be able to do. I want you all to know that freedom at its heart is simply the right to choose. With this right, we can choose what is good and right, or we can choose what is wrong. Think about it. The slave owners who, even after the Emancipation Proclamation, used their freedom to move their enslaved people to Texas. They used their freedom to make a morally wrong choice, taking advantage of the lack of Union strength west of the Mississippi River. This shows us something that we must think about. It shows us that the right to choose doesn't mean that we'll always choose right. Which brings me to my second point. Freedom needs liberty. Freedom is not free. Liberty pays its price. Liberty is the safe space where freedom can be used responsibly. It's a place where individual and community rights are protected. It's not a place where there are no consequences for your actions. So we need to look more closely at liberty. Simply put, liberty is often seen as a special part of freedom. The freedoms that are specifically protected by law. Freedom, on the other hand, is a wider idea, and it includes all ways that we make our own choices. Personal responsibility is a strong base for keeping both liberty and freedom. While freedom lets us choose, responsibility makes sure that the choices that we make have others in mind for the good of society. This stops freedom from turning into chaos or harm. It means respecting the rights of people and the property of others and following the laws and helping our community. My last point, General Order Number 3 perplexed me when I saw that the freed are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages, and they are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported by idleness. This last point, even if it seemed practical at the time, shows the huge challenges and the long, hard road to recovery. It's a long, hard road because there are several misunderstandings about what to do best. This long, hard road even challenges us today. I remember going to Iraq in 2003, and I remember hearing reports about several Iraqi people gathered around the military posts. And they were gathered around, and we were trying to figure out what are they doing gathering around the military posts. And one of them said, "You said, Americans, that you were going to give us freedom." They asked, where was the free stuff? And I remember thinking in my mind that a lot of times we really think that freedom is free. 7 years later, I returned to Iraq. And I was sitting down at a local place with a lot of local leaders, and we were talking about this idea of freedom. One of the leaders looked at me and said, "You folks in America, you guys have freedom figured out." I looked back at him and I said, "No, we've never had freedom figured out. As a matter of fact, freedom is not something that you ever figure out. The cause of freedom has and always will be unfinished business." What do you mean by unfinished business? I began to tell them of the story of the Articles of Confederation, followed by a constitution, followed by a civil war, followed by this day that we celebrate on today, Juneteenth. The news was no good news, but the real thing that changed the day at Juneteenth was people showed up with force to make change happen. I say to you, brothers and sisters, that we are dealing today with unfinished business. Since Juneteenth, we've experienced the civil rights movement. We are also experiencing a movement on today. And a good neighbor will realize that we have a responsibility in our time to address the issues of the day. Would you agree with me that we're dealing with unfinished business? Are we ready to walk in this time of unfinished business? As I think of unfinished business, I think of this passage in Scripture that reminds me of who a real friend is. A friend is someone that stands with you in times of adversity. Do I have any friends here that are ready to do some unfinished business? Juneteenth 2025, we're here for unfinished business. This is a call to action. A call to the action that requires us to show up with a new force. Preacher, what is this new force that you're talking about? I am talking about force of unwavering love. Right? It takes unwavering love to show up for somebody that can't show up for themselves. It takes unwavering love to go to the ballot box not only every 4th year, but every time it opens. Yes. Come on, somebody. It takes unwavering love to address the issues before it makes it to the docket. It takes unwavering love to show up and talk to the leaders in our community about what's going on. Yeah. Maybe we don't know what's going on, but I want to tell each of you what time it is. It is time for us to address this unfinished business. I love you. I love each of you. And I say this every time I leave somewhere. A good neighbor is a generational neighbor. Meet me at the cross in whatever you do. Walk, work, and witness.